Good evening and welcome to State of Business on Art Television. I am Tamiru Nimsat. Let's have a look at the headlines. Inflation gains pace in June compared to May. Increased defense budgets contributes to inflation worldwide, former Australian Prime Minister says. News in detail. Sri Lanka's inflation, as measured by the National Consumer Price Index, gained pace in June, reaching 2.4% year-over-year, up from 1.6% in May. This increase is largely attributed to rising food prices, which have been affected by weather-related disruptions to crops. In monthly terms, prices edged up by 0.9% between May and June, reversing the negative 0.9% change seen between April and May. Specifically, food prices climbed by 2.4% in June on a month-on-month basis, turning from a negative 1.6% in May. On an annual basis, food prices rose by 1.9%, accelerating from the 0.5% increase in May. Non-food prices also rose by 2.7% in June from a year ago, picking up from 2.4% in May. Despite these, monthly prices for non-food items declined by 0.4%, slightly higher than the 0.3% decline in May. Meanwhile, core prices, which exclude the often volatile food, energy and transport sectors, reported a 3.9% increase in June, up from 3.1% in May. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena inaugurated the Sitauka Museum, built in a historic building owned by the Department of Railway in Avisaville recently. The Prime Minister highlighted the museum's importance in preserving and conveying the natural history of Sri Lanka to the future generations. The museum has been developed at a cost of 50 million rupees, funded by the Central Cultural Fund and constructed with the labour of the Sri Lankan Navy. Speaking at the inauguration, Prime Minister Gunawardena remarked on the historical significance of the Sitauka region and its legendary kings Rajasingha and Mayadunna. The Prime Minister also praised the efforts of the Sitauka Urban Council and the academics who contributed to bringing this cultural gem to the public. He highlighted that the museum not only honors the past but also serves as an educational resource for future generations. The Sitauka Museum is now open to the public, offering a glimpse into a proud and resilient period of Sri Lankan history. The Small-Scale Agribusiness Partnership Symposium, dedicated to mitigating adverse impacts on small-scale agricultural enterprises, concluded successfully at the Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration on Tuesday. The event was organized by the Project on Adverse Impact Mitigation for Skilled Agribusiness under the Agriculture Ministry and was chaired by Agriculture and Plantation Industry Minister Mahinda Amarveera and State Minister of Agriculture and Plantation Industries Mohan Priyadarshan de Silva. The primary objective of the conference was to develop value chains related to agricultural products, introduce specific markets for project beneficiaries, identify market needs, and create a platform for export promotion. The project aims to minimize the adverse effects on small-scale agricultural businesses and is being implemented in 100 village officer domains. These domains were selected based on the catchment system of the Malwatuoya, Dadaroya, and Mioy rivers and span across 6 districts: Kurunegala, Puttalam, Anuradhapura, Mana, Vaunia and Matali, covering the northwest, north-central, north and central provinces. Targeting 40,000 families or around 180 individuals engaged in small-scale agricultural businesses, the project's main goals are to alleviate poverty, ensure food security and build resilience to climate change among the selected beneficiaries. Over 60 representatives from agriculture-related organizations participated in the symposium. Stay tuned. We will return after the short commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said that the increasing defense budgets worldwide, driven by the need for heightened global security, is a major contribution to inflation. He said that this new economic environment, marked by expansionary fiscal policies and higher interest rates, presents challenges that governments must navigate. The former Australian Prime Minister said this speaking at a talk hosted by the geopolitical cartographer at a hotel in Colombo recently.
Because this new environment has a rate premium that now exists for global security. So inflation is obviously impacted by expansionary fiscal policies, and those expansionary fiscal policies aren't just in, I would argue in some cases, of governments who can't control their spending, but they're actually being driven by the fact that defence budgets are all increasing. The other part of it goes to this reindustrialising and the costs of government intervention to achieve that. Whether it's the IRA Act in the United States or similar type measures, this is driving budgets, which in turn is impacting inflation, which in turn impacts rates. So interest rates were never going to stay at the levels they were pre-pandemic. That was obvious. Those low rates were driven by another set of economic forces over the 10 or so years before. They are always going to settle a little higher. But the truth is they're going to settle higher than they otherwise would because of the nature of the way of the new bipolar world we live in is now operating. And so that is something we will live with, and we will live with for some time. And it won't just impact liberal democracies, it will affect the entire global economy, and is something that governments will be wrestling with for some time.
Speaking at the panel discussion held at the event, former Australian Prime Minister stressed the importance of regional cooperation, particularly within the framework of the Quad, and the need for strategic collaboration in the Indian Ocean.
Countries like Australia, like India, have important roles to play in, I think, supporting smaller countries, developing countries, to give them some breathing space. And through our own relationships, I used to find when I was Prime Minister that when I would engage with my American friends and counterparts, I would often be making the case on behalf of decisions that were being made in my part of the world, and trying to condition expectations about how nations should be engaging. And I saw that as our responsibility. So while there are, if you like, apex players in all of this, there are many others who have strong influence, and I think Australia fits into that, and we have an important role to play in all of that. We have appreciated that we have coastlines on the east and the west, and that we look towards the Indian Ocean, not just towards the Pacific. This is why we so readily embraced the terminology of Shinzo Abe about the Indo-Pacific. And that's for me, for one, I would like to see greater humanitarian economic development, strategic cooperation in the Indian Ocean from the Quad, not just the focus that sits in the Pacific. And I suspect that is shared by the other nations in the Quad and the governments that are running those countries now.
The Hambantota International Port Group showcased its strategic vision and accomplishments at the Sri Lanka Transport and Logistics Conference 2024, organized by Brixa Consulting India, held in Colombo recently. The conference brought together key stakeholders from both public and private sectors to discuss current and future challenges in the transport and logistics market, aiming to create a common platform for interaction and collaboration. Deputy General Manager, Commercial and Marketing of HIPG, Bindurana Singh, highlighted the port's growth, capacity and multi-purpose offerings, focusing on HIP's 5-pillar growth strategy. He elaborated on significant milestones the port has reached, including annual throughput achievements, year-on-year increases in transshipment, advancements in bunkering and energy hub activities, and the latest success in securing container operations. He also highlighted the planned and ongoing infrastructure developments and investments to enhance the different segments of HIPG's services, which garnered significant interest from both local and international participants. General Manager, Commercial and Marketing of HIPG, Lance Zhu, also shared his views, emphasizing the importance of such conferences for industry growth. Stay tuned for stock update. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on positive notes today.
The All Share Price Index gained 104.45 points to close at 11,701.64, and the S&P SL20 gained 44.95 points to close at 3,413.61. The turnover was 0.5 billion rupees and over 20 million shares were traded.
Up next are forex rates. That's all our news for today. For this and more, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. Take care and good night.